My name is Christy Busby, and you are about to listen to the next episode of my podcast called F.A.T.E. From Atheism to Enlightenment. So come on in, join me. We're going to talk about it all, from atheism to enlightenment. Alrighty, guys, here we go. Get ready, and welcome to your fate. Welcome, everyone. On today's show, I have a lovely woman. Her name is Susan Plunket. She is a writer and a psychologist. She has a new book coming out. It is called Paranormal Perspectives, a Jungian understanding of transcendent experiences. I hope I got that right. Susan, welcome to your fate, my friend. How are you doing today? Thank you. Great. I read your book. It is magical, mystical. It is. I could only hope to have one of the experiences that you've had in your life, and it really takes you from pre getting here, pre birth, up until your up until now. So it's it spans your
75.
whole life, and it is such a great read, and you learn so much. I can't wait to get into it all. But let's start with before you got here. I found it absolutely fascinating that you had recollection of a twin that was supposed to be here with you that decided not to come with you. I mean, can you talk a little bit about your experiences of before you were born?
Yes. I mean, I wouldn't have remembered those as an adult without regression work with a regressionist to go back there. That's not the only time I went back, but yes, I was supposed to come with Sophie, my twin. We were working on building our bodies, our baby bodies. We were visiting the Earth plane and hanging around the mother and doing that. And then we would go back, and it was getting on in her pregnancy. You don't have to be in utero, because you're too conscious to really want to be in a baby's body, which you can't even operate. So finally, around the 8th month of the mother's pregnancy, she said she wasn't coming. And I didn't want to go either without her. But for some reason I did. I guess I had made that agreement to do that. And so I was born without her. And then she became my imaginary friend, which is something a lot of children have, imaginary friends. And she helped me a lot to tolerate being here as a baby, because I think all babies are very confused when they're first born because they don't know what they're doing trapped in that body. They don't know how to operate it. And they still have clinging to them a lot of knowledge. So a lot of times babies cry. You think it's for no reason, but they're just confused. But as you're here, you get educated and socialized and indoctrinated by your senses, because the way we're designed, the human design with our eyes, this environment becomes very compelling. It's almost like you don't see anything else besides what everybody's seeing, because we're designed to perceive this environment that we're projecting. So you forget where you came from. Children remember a lot, and they see a lot. And their brains are in the theta brainwave state until they're about age 7. But by then, the indoctrination from school, teachers, parents, caregivers is intense. And so we block out everything else mostly. Some people don't, like intuitives and psychics. They seem to keep a channel open, but I'm not walking around perceiving every dimension. Although I do think we all can, because our consciousness is where we put it. And it doesn't have to be in this dimension, because we're simultaneously, because we are quantum beings existing in every dimension. So we can move our consciousness to different dimensions. It doesn't require a body. That's why what happens when you die? Nothing. You just drop the physical body. You continue in your subtle body, but your consciousness doesn't require any body. Your consciousness is pure consciousness, which we all have. We all participate in the one, the same consciousness. You know, that old saying, it's not that we're a drop in the ocean. We are the whole ocean in a drop. Every one of us. Every one of us. So we have all the power of the whole ocean, which is to say, all the power of the divine, the quantum field.
I thought that was fascinating. And the other thing that what it spoke to me is that babies are kind of born here with a much greater emotional intelligence than we give them credit for. That they are much more aware, that they are kind of have one foot in the 3D plane and they're still in the other world, what you called the formless realm, having discussions and still planning and plotting their lives and negotiating and in all of that. And that was something that I never even had really considered being a possibility. You know, when you think about children or babies, you just automatically assume that they don't have the level of intelligence that maybe you and I would have. But it really is such a thing that they're born with that level of intelligence and kind of born who they're going to be. But they just don't have the capacity to use their communication. Use language. They can't speak. They can't tell you anything because they're still in that learning phase of development that lasts quite a few years. But that they are still, I mean, it almost makes you, I don't have kids, but it put an entirely different spin on what a child is and how to communicate with a child and how to relate with a child, because you understand now that they are just kind of getting their legs in this 3D world, but they are already built in with some sort of intelligence.
They are a soul. They are a soul.
And yes,
they are ancient. They are ancient.
And just like, you know, I am sure you feel, even though we attach numbers to our ages, I am sure you feel at 75, you know I feel older, but I don't feel that much different than I did when I was younger. It almost feels like you are continuously that inner part of you that never changes, regardless of what number you're putting on your, whatever. It doesn't matter what number is on the cake. Because you really do maintain a certain baseline of who you are. Maybe you grow up, maybe you evolve, maybe your things change a little bit for you, but the core being of who you are, whether you're 7 years old or 50 years old, seems to stay somewhat the same. Would you agree with that assessment?
The soul. Your soul is your soul. Your soul is with you the whole way, but we're two people, really. We're our eternal being, our soul, but we're also our person functioning in this third dimension, moving to the fourth dimension. So we're straddling two worlds. We are our soul being, which we often forget. We get caught up in Earth. We came here to have an Earth experience, and we do have it, and we're supposed to have it, but sometimes we forget and we think that's all there is. We forget the soul part, but we're riding two horses always. Our eternal being that will go on and are just current, like, in this life, we have a name, which leaves us at the end of this life, but our soul
Eternal
continues.
beings of light we are. That is it, you know?
Yes.
That we are
Yeah, that's what
eternal
we are.
beings of light.
That's
Yep.
what we are.
I mean, your book is fascinating. You have so many magical experiences from the time you were a child, very young, from when, you talk about having an ice skating accident and almost having to lose your toes and how the relationship between your mother and your father is so different. Your father throughout the book seems very in tune with a metaphysical side, with spirituality, and your mom seems very rational, reasonable, has a different head on her shoulders. And why don't you talk just a little bit about that story in the book and how you got through it and what kind of
Uh, I grew up uh, outside town called Woodstock, which is famous for the Woodstock Folk Festival. Um, and the firemen used to um, create an ice skating rink by hosing over a field and just freezing the field so we could go ice skating. But it got really cold. It was probably 10 below. But, in those days when I was growing up in the 1960s, parents just said, go out and play or go ice skating. They didn't check the temperature or say anything to you. Just go play. So I was 11, or I think I was 11, maybe 12. And I went ice skating. It was 10 below. So I put extra wool socks on and I laced up my skates really tight. And I was skating for hours, skating around and around. And when I got home, I took off my socks and my toes were as black as your blouse. And I called my mother and she screamed. She actually screamed. My mother was a nurse. And she called my father. And they thought I would have to go to the hospital, but we lived a half an hour from the hospital. So instead, they each took a foot. They laid me on the couch. They each took a foot and a towel and they started rubbing, and it really hurt. After half an hour, they were sort of bluish white. Anyway, my mother said, if gangrene comes in, you're going to lose your toes, maybe your feet. And so we have to go to the hospital now. And I just begged her. And for once, she listened to me. But during that time, it was touch and go for a couple of weeks. And the doctor said, I think we should take them off. And again, I begged. He didn't. I didn't know what gangrene meant anyway. But as I was trying to fall asleep, next to my bed, it was like a monster. He would go in between a monster and a human, and it was terrifying to me. And I would cry out, and my father would comfort me and tell me to think of Easter or the Easter bunny or a picnic. My mother would just sleep on. Um, in any case, not only the monster came, but this other being came, and I thought it was God. And I asked, are you God? Are you Jesus? And he said, no, I'm Hilarion. I'm Master Hilarion. And he told me how to use light to protect my toes. Um, and I did it. I would try to do that because I was so scared. I didn't know how I was going to manage with no toes. How could I go to high school dances? How could I do the bunny hop? I was so scared. So I would do what I was told. So there were scary beings and then there were helpful beings. And that was that
throughout
incident.
your whole life, you have had these incidences with some of them have been teachers for you. Some of them have been just experiences with, I guess you would say, paranormal experiences. Um,
Huh.
why, why, is that? What do you think it was about you that allowed you to kind of see through the veil of possibility in a way?
Well, I think we all can do that. But I think when intense things happen to you, like being told as an 11-year-old, oh, we're going to chop off all your toes and maybe your feet, I think your mind opens a little bit. I think it's just like when someone dies that you love, you
Yeah.
change a little, you transform. The veil becomes thinner. So I think it was partly to do with my regular person self being, as my mother would have said, ridiculous, spaced out, not paying attention to the world. I didn't take the programming as easily or as well as she did, for example. She got on in the world. She got promotions. She was smart. I was sent to the school psychologist. I was too spaced out. I had to be moved away from the window to sit by the bulletin board because I was looking out too much. So it's partly just the way I was wired within the normal range. You know, there are children that don't concentrate well or who are spaced out. And all children get scared by scary things and many children see monsters that are probably
Yeah.
actually real thought forms that are just abroad because humans are so powerful that when we think a thing, we're actually creating it and it is existing in some dimension. So there are negative thought forms that children perceive because children's attention
Yes.
is freer. It's not as locked in to what we all
It's
agree
it's not
reality
as
is
as
here.
focused
So,
into only the 5 senses that we're given. And
yeah,
I would, not,
exactly.
just dabbling in what I've been doing the last few years talking to people, I would predict for you that possibly you kinda do live in a different brain wave pattern for more often than we like, I would love to
Yeah.
have some of the experiences, like, if Hilarion woulda came down to me and I woulda had that experience as a child, like, I mean, I'm sure maybe I would have been scared, but, like, any of the experience that you would have had throughout the book, you have so many of them. I have never had anything remotely close, and I would predict that maybe you do live in a different brainwave, higher realmy kind of little arena. I don't
I don't
know.
know if it's higher, but I think it's maybe a little more at time. I didn't, I wasn't as easily programmed as
Yeah.
my mother would have liked, I think. But you know, if you want to have an experience of Hilarion, just relax, lay on your bed, close your eyes, breathe into your heart, think of him, just focus on him. Just really focus on him and ask him to give you a sign that he is there. Say, look, sometime in the next 48 hours, please give me a sign that you have heard me reaching out to you. And then you have to watch for the next 48 hours to see what the sign is. It could be a green ray of light. An emerald appears in your life, or because he's master of the green ray, the green healing ray. But a sign will come. They respond. And I think I talk to them so much. Not, I'm not always seeing them, but I lay down on my bed an hour, 2 hours a day, and I imagine it's awful. Wherever
Yes.
you put your consciousness, you go. Go to him, call him, go to him, ask him for a sign. You'll have a
I will.
sign.
And I love that about the book that you give very specific exercises about healing, about consulting your inner soul, dream work, like every experience that you have at the end of the chapter, you give us an idea of how we can go there as well and practice
Yeah.
tapping into other ways of seeing things, of being, of healing, of it's really a great aspect of the book that it gives people tools actually to kind of start formulating their own way of having a spiritual development.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Because we're
Yeah.
all the same. We are actually all made of the same stuff. We have the same
Yeah.
design in our species, the human species, all humans. But, dogs and cats don't see our reality. Dragonflies have 60,000 eyes. If there was no humans on Earth, none of this would be
Yeah.
here the way we see it. It's only this because we perceive it. But without humans, there wouldn't be an
Right.
Earth like this. It would be what the dogs or the horses or the elephants see, which is slightly different
Right.
from what we see. But all of us, all the humans, we can all do the same things if we want to. It's where you put your
Yeah.
attention and your energy. Your consciousness is free to go where it wants to go.
I,
All of us, yours, mine, everyone listening, we all can do the same
I'm
stuff
working on it.
because we're the same
Right.
instrument.
I'm definitely working on it. I'm sitting in a meditation practice daily, and I am starting to feel different things and see flashes of light. And I think it definitely is a practice, and it's definitely you have to be um, dedicated to sitting down with yourself, looking within daily. And I think over time, I am starting to open up
Yeah.
more and more and more. And I think it does have a lot to do with your belief system. If you have to let go of these preconceived notions of what our reality is. Basically, you have to kind of open yourself up to all possibilities. Really,
Exactly.
you really have to just be an open canvas too. I mean, and it's
Exactly.
hard for human beings because we do get programmed so badly through our education system, through the television, now through our phones, and we're distracted that it's just a very difficult decision to rip yourself away from what we've been fed as 3D reality. And part of the reason I'm out here on this
Yeah.
podcast is to try and rip open people's brain to kind of think about non-mainstream ways of being that although some seem fantastical and maybe a few years ago even I would have said crazy. At the end of the day, the more and more I walk down this path, the more and more sense it makes to me, the more and more
Mhm.
it rings true, the less fear I have and the more peace I have. Like it has just been um it has been an amazing eye-opening and awakening situation for me doing this. So in the
Yeah.
book, you say that you are Nephilium. I don't even know if that's the way you say it. Is it Nephilium?
Oh,
Nephilim.
Nephilim. I think, it's right. I
Nephilim.
think it's
Okay.
Nephilim, but I, it wasn't intuitive. It was actually a shaman, an Australian shaman who was the daughter of an Australian Aborigine and an Irish guy, two powerful magical bloodlines in this shaman who told me that I was a Nephilim. And I was like, I don't like that because I think Nephilims are bad angels or dark figures. And I didn't know that was the first time I'd ever heard that word. It was maybe 20 years ago. And I don't know how a long time ago. And I knew I had heard that once before when I was very young, sitting by the South China Sea. Anyway, I looked it up and, you know, it said that it just before the flood, Noah, the flood and the ark and all that, there were humans, and then there were angels that mated with humans, and their children were
Oh.
Nephilims. Were Nephilim. I think that's how you say it. And somehow one of my lives, which may be one of yours or maybe someone else is listening, was being one of those children.
Interesting.
So that's what they are. But I think that doesn't mean that's what I am now. It just means that one of my lives, I think, maybe was that. But we had a lot of lives, all of us. And so if one of them, you are the product of two different things, it probably happened to a lot of
I'm
us.
sure. Let's talk a little bit. When you were young, you had a sister named Anne, and you tell a story in the book how you had you had astral projection with her. Let's talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that experience in your life.
My sister Anne, um, she was 6 years younger and far more powerful and nicer and sweeter and spiritual and just such a good person. And we shared a bedroom. And my two brothers, they shared a different bedroom. But Anne she was very mystical. And also her being 6 and me then being 11, she was still a younger child. And she would straighten me out about things because by 11, I was losing everything. I was losing, except that I had had that experience with my feet, which slowed me down from moving into adult thinking because of those experiences. So I wouldn't realize, but one night I found myself over the Ashokan Reservoir looking at a UFO. Just my consciousness was there. I thought it was me, but it was really, I knew my body was back in the bed and she was there. And she told me she'd seen it many times. This is always coming over the Ashokan Reservoir is one of the reservoirs for New York City. Gives water. Anyways, we're hanging out there and it just disappeared. It didn't fly away. It just wasn't there. So then she said, "Oh, let's just go look at the moon." And I knew how to do that because she had told me before. You just imagine yourself where you want to be, and you're there. And it was reddish. I know from Earth it doesn't look red, but it was reddish. And then we came back. I guess we thought ourselves back into our room, and there were our bodies lying on the bed, and we were, boom, back in there. But soon after that, I didn't leave my body much because I was getting older and I was getting caught up in everything here. But I would ask her things and she would say, you just imagine it. You don't will yourself. You just imagine and believe.
The power of imagination. You have a lot of teachers that you refer to, and you and I do have this in common. One of the very first things that I did when I was starting to investigate spirituality and open myself up to it, because for most of my life I was not a spiritual person. I was an atheist. I didn't believe any of this stuff. I had a health crisis and started doing energy healing, and then I started opening up to all types of different things. And one of the first books that I read, it was actually an audiobook, was Seth Speaks. And that book changed so much for me. It really did. It's I was consumed by it. I found it to be just mind-blowing in a way. But why don't we tell the audience who Seth is? What's what is that all about? Seth Speaks, because if anybody looks up that book and listens to it, it's just going to take you out of this world. So,
Seth, Jane Roberts is a woman. She died, but when she was alive, she channeled Seth Seth is a fifth dimensional being. He had been a human many eons ago, and she knew him when they were both humans, which was one of the reasons he could find a channel through to her. And he told her all kinds of stuff, and they taped it because this was the 1960s when she was channeling him. And it was like reel to reel, probably, or maybe cassettes, like, back then. And then they would transcribe everything and make these books. This was a great gift to all of us. I was scared to death when I read Seth Speaks. I was in my 20s, and I was like, I wouldn't read it unless somebody else was home, like my boyfriend or whoever I was with at the time, because it was so far out. And of course, like you, I loved it. But, I had my childhood stuff, but now I'm in my 20s and I'm trying to be an adult. But of course, I find myself reading Seth at 25 years old and lapping it up and back into the stuff again. So anybody that wants to learn about the way Seth sees the world, it's really
It
wonderful
really
to read.
is. It changed. It really probably was the book that allowed me to step into this world with a with a greater perspective and much more open mind and a lot of humility that I don't know everything. Everybody thinks that they know what's going on, that they have this belief system that they cling to for dear life.
Right.
And it really allowed me to be like, I don't really know a whole lot. I don't know. I don't really know what's going on. Hey,
Yeah. I mean, it's even a
it
little
is.
scary. I mean, to consider some of the
Yes.
things it says, but it doesn't scare me now. But when I was in my 20s, they were
It's
like,
pretty out there.
whoa. So I
Yes.
think Seth is wonderful. A great place if anybody's interested. Seth
Yes.
Speaks
Pick
by
it up
Jane
and
Roberts.
listen to it, and it will change your
Yeah.
perspective on everything. You also had a teacher that you talk about throughout the book, and it's another. I'm not sure if I'm going to get the name right. The Monka. Yes. Can you
Monka.
tell
Yeah.
us who that person is?
God, Monka. I've been just thinking of Monka. I could weep with gratitude. Monka was never a human. I assumed when he started speaking through a channel to me that he had been a human. And once I said, well, did that happen to you when you were a human? And he said, the way he talked, my dear, I've never been a human. But I didn't think to ask him, well, what are you then? I mean, I did find out 20 years later when my father died, but he was and is, because to this day, I haven't had a conversation with Monka since my father died, maybe, and that was 15 years ago. But most of the conversations I had with Monka were in my 40s, and I'm now 75, because he's not really around now. But I have all these notes. I have so many typed transcripts of everything he said that I still read every morning. I read a page in the morning because I'm still learning from the things Monka taught. He was, I don't know, he was harsh. He was a hard taskmaster. But the way I found out what he was I hadn't spoken to him since my 40s. And he told me then, I won't always be available. And then when I was in my early 60s, my father was 88 and he was dying. And in my 40s, I thought my father got sick. And I was upset. And I told Plunket, and Plunket said, your father's not dying now. But if you want, when he dies, I will be there. And I said, of course I want you to be there. He said, okay. And then I forgot. I didn't forget about it, but life moved on. And then my father's dying all these years later. And he dies. And on the way home from his funeral, I passed this is synchronicity, a big sign, psychic fair. So I go into the psychic fair and there's like 10 psychics and you can sit down with any one of them. And I just thought, oh, well, my father just died. I just had an experience of him at the funeral, but let me see what he has to say or what anybody has to say. One of the psychics says to me, oh, yeah, your father's here. He'll be around another 6 months, then he'll be too far away. But he wants to thank you for the cashmere socks you put on him in the hospital. No one knew that but me and him. And then she said, oh, golden angels came for him. And one of them was sent by you with the initial M. And that was Monka. And then I knew that Monka was an angel. I never knew that. All the time he was telling me, like, not to be pretentious, and not to be arrogant. And, he was harsh. He was like, he said, you got to stop experiencing the things I say to you like a slap in the face. It's for your own good. I mean, anyway, that's how I found out. Like, why is there a psychic fair at this hotel on the road after I've just left my father? And why does, it's just, this is just the way the universe is.
There's synchronicity.
Synchronicity, a
Yes.
very Jungian,
Yes.
Carl Jung, all about synchronicity.
Another a huge influence on you was that famous gentleman right there, Carl Jung. So,
yeah, Carl Jung he was a Swiss psychologist.
yes.
I'm a psychologist because of Carl Jung, I think. But he was an unusual psychologist. He was into tarot. He was into I Ching. He was into all things seances, all things mystical. And he really believed in the oneness of all beings and that therapy wasn't done until a person was whole. And by whole, he meant aware of both selves, your conscious self and your unconscious self, your ego self and your capital S self, your eternal, forever self.
It really is a shame. I mean,
I love Carl.
There's never been out there anybody as mainstream as him talking about metaphysical things since. And I think that's by design.
Yeah.
We have absolutely stamped out that now it would be considered much too woo-woo, much too out there, much too not serious. Other scientists would have probably ostracized him, outed him. The media, well, they did.
Well, they
yes, they
did.
Freud,
Well,
he did have his battles, but maybe that's why he was also in a way, though, very well respected and followed at the same time. Maybe it was his time to rise. Maybe no one else of his ilk would get to that level, maybe on the internet or YouTube, maybe, I don't know, but he would get on mainstream television and have discussions and talk about these things, and you would never see that in mainstream television anymore. They just would not even put somebody up there and have a serious discussion about metaphysical things, spirituality, our soul, our unconscious ways, any of that. And it's a shame that it's gone that way, because I really think society is missing that part of our existence. It's because that's why we don't know who we are, because we don't take that aspect of who we are seriously. People think it is just not, we cling to science like it is the only way. And I used to be one of those people. I was that person that clung to science. If you can't see it, taste it, feel it, smell it, it doesn't exist. If science can't back it up, it's not worthy of a discussion. And, I have completely and utterly and totally changed my mind on every single way now, but I've been through a lot. And I say this on the show all the time, but people sometimes need to be shaken to awaken. You need to have trauma. You need to have some sort of earth-shattering moment that allows you to kind of snap out of your own ego and look at life differently. We all can't be as lucky as you are, Susan, to be born with these abilities and this sense that you have seemed to have your whole life, where you could see and sense other things that most people can't. I mean, even throughout the book, you talk about shape shifting, seeing other paranormal experiences, ghosts, even fairies, gnomes. Um, but you go into so many different aspects that you're able to sense, and even the experience with your own daughter, of having to fight for her over an evil energy. So why don't we talk a little bit, I don't want to talk about, I want to leave a little bit of the to the reader's imagination. Like, definitely go out and read the book, but there really so much has happened within your lifetime. So much. Metaphysical, magical, mystical, you name it, it's happened.
Well, you mentioned the
Yes.
shape shifting. That I had no awareness of that was happening. Absolutely no awareness. Um, I had a boyfriend in my 30s, and uh, he looked at me. We after we were having
Yeah.
sex. I'll
Say
just
it.
say we were having sex, and as people often do a lot in their 30s with a new boyfriend, and he's looking at me in a really strange way, and I and it was a little like he looked like he was scared or something. But anyway, we just continued. I blocked that out and we went to sleep. The next day I came back. I was in graduate school. I came back to our studio apartment and he had written a song and we was recording it, and it was called The Girl with the Golden Eyes. And I said, "Well, what's that about?" He said, "It's about how you friggin' shapeshift with sex and your eyes, your neck gets longer, your face becomes more oval, and your eyes turn bright gold." And I was like,
Wow.
"No, that does not happen. That does not happen." And he said, "Oh, that happens." Anyway, so I went to an intuitive and I said, "Is he having me on? Because I don't feel that, because I'm just in the moment." And she said, "That is that was your Atlantean form, and you knew him in Atlantis, and you appear to him when you're making love in your Atlantean form."
Mind blowing.
That was
Yeah.
I really was.
Mind blowing.
It was mind blowing to me. I would have never known, and I bet that happens to other people too. Only they
Right.
have their eyes shut, or they don't realize it, or it's dark. But if you make love with your eyes open and there's lights on or candles, or the other person is aware, um, because we all knew each other. We keep interacting with the same
Yes.
people, as we all keep getting
Yep.
born to learn our lessons and have our
Yeah.
challenges.
It seems like,
So that
yeah, it
probably
seems like
does
we
happen.
keep coming back here, and we bring the same folks with us. We have a bit of a family of sorts, and
Yeah.
our tribe,
Our tribe.
and we're all learning things
Tribe.
here with the same people, the same souls. They just have a different avatar on, you know?
Yeah,
It's a
a
different
different
costume.
costume.
Exactly. Let's talk a little bit. You lost your
Yeah,
sister at at a young age. It is it, and it,
yeah,
that was a lot of trauma for you, and grief, and whatnot, as well as when you lost your father. You talk about both of those incidences in your book, and they were different. But can you let us know how you ended up kind of getting through your grief? Because it's really a beautiful story. I actually cried through the sister part because I have two sisters and I just can't even imagine.
yeah, yeah. Well, I couldn't I was having a hard time accepting that Anne was gone, that she was younger and she was already gone. So, I knew that there was a psychologist in California, Michael Newton, who had accidentally he did a lot of past life regression work with his patients. And then suddenly, spontaneously, some of his patients weren't going to a past life. They were going to a space between lives, like where people hang out between one incarnation and another. So he devised a protocol to help people go to that life between life place. And I knew about this. And I knew Anne must be there. And I wanted to go there. And Michael Newton had a colleague who was in New York City. So I went to see the colleague and he said, okay, I will do this with you. It'll be 2 4-hour sessions. The first session, it'll be just straight past life regression. You have to do this because I have to trust that you'll come back and stay connected. And I have to make sure you don't flip out. So we did all that. And then he said, okay, the second 4-hour session a week later, you go to your last death and you tag on to that experience and you go over and he talks you through it. But he keeps a tether on you because all the time when you're going over, he keeps on trying to talk to you and you keep on saying, leave me alone, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you because I'm so here. And everything is through mental telepathy over there. It's all mental telepathy. And it's so great. Everybody understands everybody. You don't have to fumble with your words. You don't have to, it's heart to heart. And it's just so beautiful. And I saw my father, I saw my sister. She explained to me why she went so young, what she was working on. And it was just anybody who wants to see someone who died, look up Michael Newton's work, find a life between life regression therapist, go see them. Again, your consciousness will go where you send it. And you're lying down. The psychologist is right next to you and talking to you, and they force you back at a certain point, and you don't want to come back. You want them to stop talking to you. But when they talk to you, they're asking you questions and it's getting recorded. So then you have a record of it, but you will never forget it anyway.
I actually have
a
quantum healing session scheduled in Durango, Colorado. And I'm very interested to find out what my subconscious is going to tell me, what will be revealed to me in this session. I don't know, but it's the same thing. They're going to record it. I'll get a recording of it.
Quantum healing is a fascinating thing because, we have our physical body, but everything that happens to our physical body is determined by our subtle body. And it requires quantum healing to heal the subtle body. So if you heal the subtle body in the quantum realm, it downloads into the physical body and it's beautiful. So quantum healing is the way to heal. Everything is quantum. Quantum is everything. Yep. That's how you astral travel. That's how you go and see the moon. Because in the quantum realm, which we never left, there's total freedom to heal, to travel. It's just when you believe that this body, this flesh is real, which it isn't. I mean, we imagine it, but you will go and to Colorado, you will heal your subtle body. That all downloads into your. Sometimes I wonder, why do I take vitamins? My subtle body is discerning everything. So I should just meditate more.
Yeah.
And then I am very more illness. Whatever it was your gift. Because we have pain and challenges and crises in order to wake up. There's the only reason for them. And we often decide them before we incarnate. I'm going to have this. This is going to boost me into awakening. You wouldn't be getting a quantum healing if you hadn't been
true.
sick.
And I do think that this was my path, and yes. I am on my path, and there are no accidents, and lost a decade of my life to ill health, and I'm so ready to get who I am, but a better version of me back.
All pain and all illness downloads from the subtle body into the physical body as a catalyst for healing. Seth says it, and Ra, who we haven't mentioned yet, the law of one and Ra. Ra talks about that we decide things before we're born, because before we're born, we understand that this is Earth school, and we want to heal different things in our subtle body and in our eternal soul. And we need challenges. And we think, oh, that's nothing. I'll get this, I'll get that, I'll have that, I'll take on that. We load up our plate with challenges. And then we get here and we forgot, we go through the veil of forgetting. We forgot we are eternal. We forgot we agreed to all this stuff. We forgot the reason for it, that it was a catalyst. And here we are. We're like, and it's hard dealing with it. The thing is, we have to switch into like, I'm grateful that I got this challenge. I would never have awakened.
It's hard,
but it's hard.
Difficult. I think you kind of go through the stages of almost when someone dies, like grieving the loss of who I was, grieving my inability to do and be who, not having the energy, not having the physicality, not having the brain power, I mean, there's so many debilitating things have happened to me. And even though, I do my hair and makeup for the show, on the daily basis, I still fight off some pretty bad symptoms, and I have a lot of anger. I have had a lot of bitterness in my life, and and it's kind of changed me fundamentally from being this very laughing, vibrant, jovial, really, at peace person to somebody that became very the opposite of that. And now I'm just coming out of this phase of my life, and I think quantum healing is the last piece of the puzzle for me.
Like, of course,
like it was.
Just
so I know we got a little bit off topic, but I do want to round back on.
Well, this is an important topic. It's an important topic, and the way that we have to approach these catalysts that at first, of course, we're shocked, we're scared, we're bitter, we're angry, but you have to move into gratitude. It's opening doors. It's not easy to be grateful when you're in pain, but we have to see the pain as part of the journey. It's not the biggest part of the journey, but every life has pain. Every life. And eventually, if we can come to like see the value of it.
I'm getting there.
No, it may be too soon to ask that of yourself, but it will be helpful down the road. Like, you'll probably look back and think, thank God that happened, because I was just living in 3D and now I'm living in 5D.
I mean, that is true. There's just no way. I was absolutely stuck in 3D before I got sick. There's just no other way of saying it.
So your soul, your eternal part said, okay, we're going to give her a catalyst now. About time for it.
Boy, did they. Yeah.
And you're like,
whoa. It figures that I have to learn everything the hard way.
Everybody does. We all learn things the hard way. We all have our own timing, our own path, but everybody has, pain. Because pain is how we awaken. Unless you're taking a life where you're just resting.
I agree. I've said it on so many times on this show that you do have to be shaken to awaken. A lot of that is pain, trauma, something to awaken you.
Yeah. Nothing awakens a person like trauma. Those near-death experiences, those people all awaken. It does. I was somewhere else.
Completely changes, flips everything on its head overnight, like instantly.
Yeah. Because the earth and all of us, despite all the tension and camps and everything, wars and political parties, things are getting better. More light is pouring into the planet. Things are getting better. More people are awakening. More people are awakening. Thanks to people like Dolores Cannon, Jane Roberts and Seth, Ra and the Law of One. People are
I believe
awakening.
that. I think there is a large contention of people out there that are starting to be aware that there has got to be more than going to a job every single day and then you get sick and die. Like there's more to life than what we have been
Exactly.
programmed to accept as our lives. There's more, so much more.
Yeah.
We're not meant to live. Yeah, that we're
So
not meant
much
to live the
more.
lives that we're living here on earth. Our entire way of living has to change. I don't know how that happens. I'm not that smart to figure all that out. But I do know,
No, because we're gamers.
yeah,
We're not supposed to know
I do know,
everything. Your eternal soul knows everything. Your higher being knows it, but our current personalities, we don't know it all.
no,
We couldn't even
no,
grasp it
and
all.
it is true. Even when you start talking about, quantum theory and the concept of time and how everything is happening in the now and time is not linear. Like when you start talking about the really difficult concepts about our reality, it is hard to wrap your head around and understand just how it's very complex and layered, the reality in which the nature of real
Yeah,
reality that we're living in. It really is.
it's true. We agree. We
Yep.
agree to linear time because if everything is happening at once. But if we
Yeah.
perceive that, our
Yes.
heads would explode because we're not designed for that. We're designed for this. Our eyes are hearing everything. We spread
Yep.
out everything on a timeline, but that's the third dimension. But in higher dimensions,
Yeah.
everything is happening at once. Physicists know that, and they tell us that. They also tell us nothing is solid. Everything is mostly
That's
empty
right.
space. And some of them go so far as to say this is all a
A
projection, a
holographic image. Yeah.
simulation, that a
Yeah.
hologram, that none of it's real,
Yep.
including our own bodies. But our senses tell us a different story.
We are a victim in
So,
to our senses in a way. We are.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
we get stuck in them. And, someone, to mention Dolores Cannon again, someone once asked her, well, like, why do we have to go through the veil of forgetting? Why can't we know that we're eternal beings of light? And she said, well, you can't have all the answers. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be a test then. Because she was talking in her day of things, Earth school being like a test. You try to wake up in
Yep.
this dimension. And so you have to find your way and you get catalysts to
You
help you
sure do.
awaken. But yeah, the truth of what is just blows our
Yeah.
three-dimensional
Yeah. And
human
it's hard to
mind.
accept, especially people have a lot of fear, and people don't like change. And when you inject that level of uh, foreign ideas to someone, they automatically shut down and they can't even entertain the possibility that life is anything other than what they've been told. It just fills them with fear.
But some people, like the people who listen to
It's
your
true.
podcast, they are ready to
Yes.
consider it. Like, oh, okay, this is what my senses tell me. But a lot of people are talking about other dimensions and there being no such thing as space and time.
Yep.
And, what's that all about? So more and more minds
I
are
agree. Even
opening.
I get texts from people, because I put my podcast on all kinds of my social media stuff, and I'll get a text from somebody that because I work in the film and television industry, and I'll get a text from some special effects guy that I worked on a show with 10 years ago, and he'll be like, "Hey, Busby," because everybody calls me Buzz or Busby in my other life. I listen to your
Oh,
podcast and
you,
it's really making me think, and when I get text like that, like from somebody who, is 60 years old and probably set in his ways that I am inspiring him to make him think, that's all I really ask for. Just, do a little thinking. So that, you know,
that's your service. This is your service on earth. You're helping other
yeah.
people you've awakened. You're helping other people to
I've
awaken. That's your service. We can either be in service or just all
Well,
about
it's interesting
ourselves,
you say that. You
you
talk
know?
about in your book, you talk about
Mm.
Ra, and you talk that he has said there are two paths in this life. There is the path of self, and there's the path of service, and that people are here to do one of the two paths here on this plane. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Ra is a six-dimensional memory group entity, he says, whatever that is. And Ra was channeled in the early 1980s through Carla Rucker. And he spoke through her, and there were three of them, somebody to record, somebody to question, and Carla was the channel. She was unconscious while she was channeling, but they taped it. And Ra explained through her, using her voice, he spoke through her voice, and there are tapes of this. And there are books called The Raw Material, or The Law of One. And Ra explained that we are all one consciousness, broken down into all gazillions of everything, humans, animals, everything. And we choose a path to grow, either service to others, which would be doing your podcast, having people say, hey, Buzz, you're making me think. Or just service to self, which is also a kind of love. He says you can advance on both paths, total selfishness and self-love. You can get a certain distance up to the sixth dimension in that path, and then you can't go further. On the path of service to others, you can go all the way home to full awakening. Because once you get up to the high sixth dimension, all those who are just serving themselves, they have to jump onto the path of service to others at that point. This is what Ra says. So even when you see like a greedy, selfish, controlling person who's taking care of only themselves, they serve the divine, according to Ra, in their own way by loving themselves. And you can progress just from loving yourself, even if you're trampling everyone else, but not all the way home.
I found that fascinating. I really did, because it speaks to really the complexity of being here. You know, I listen to a lot of people speak about spirituality, and they, the running thread through everything is love, loving others, serving others. That is what I hear most from every single source. Maybe I'm aligning with people who are here on a path of service to others more often. I don't hang out with selfish assholes. Maybe that's why I don't hear that side a lot. I don't know. But I did think it was, that was why I was asking you one of these questions, because when I learned that you could actually move forward in life being completely self-serving, it went against everything that I have been told or taught in a way, because you just automatically assume that the way towards full enlightenment is only through a service of others, to love and not to be greedy, selfish, self-obsessed. Because there are plenty of people out there that are in that category that, quite frankly, seem to do really well on this planet. They do. They really, really do. And I was like, yeah, they do. And they can get quite far just loving themselves, taking everything for themselves. They can get, according to Ra anyway, we're only in the third dimension, up to the sixth dimension. And then they will have to start to be in service to all beings. So yeah, they can. However, Ra also says that Earth is already moved into the fourth dimension. So people will have to achieve that consciousness to reincarnate back here. So if they don't either have enough self-love and greed to get there, or enough service to others to get there, they'll have to incarnate on another planet that's still third dimensional, because Earth will be, if not heaven on earth, much closer to it, much happier place for
people on all paths. So I think things are getting better here, despite the wars. And there are a lot of things that point to, a golden age will be possible in 100, 200 years here. I don't know why it's the sixth dimension that they'll have to start being in service to others, but you can advance on their path, on the path of selfishness. The more selfish and cruel you are, the faster you advance. For example, taking power over other people advances you on the dark path. So the ultimate power to take over another person is to kill them. You end their life, you end their journey. That advances people on the dark path. And there are people on the dark path. On the path of light, you advance by service to others, by sharing, by giving, by concern, by teaching. Some people love the dark. Some people love the light. It's all part of the divine. There is nothing that isn't part of the divine.
And also maybe it's duality. You can't have light without dark. You not in the
third dimension.
It's
You're right.
Up, down, black, white, left. It's all of that.
This is a dualistic dimension, the third dimension. Old, young, high, low. You put your finger right on it. We live in a dualistic dimension, the third dimension. And I think the fourth is a little less of that. But right now, and so it's not for us to judge them. They love the dark. Let them love the dark. They serve the creator in their way.
It's such an interesting concept. It's hard to wrap your head around. I don't understand anybody that comes from a place of only self-love, greed, and trying to take from others to serve yourself. It's not what I resonate with. I don't understand anybody that would resonate like that.
Yeah. Well, you're
wait. Yeah.
You're on the other path.
I guess so. You say go ahead.
And nobody's probably 100% on either path. I think Rod talks about it as being you're mostly on this path, or on the path of, say you're 80% or 60% light. We all do selfish things occasionally. We all get greedy occasionally. But the main thing is that, and on that side, occasionally they may accidentally do something, maybe for one of their children or someone they love, so they're more pure type on that side. On our side, we love the light and we aspire to it, but we screw up sometimes and we get a little
100%. There is nobody out there that doesn't have what they call, I guess, a shadow. Your shadow self.
That's a very Jungian
the
term.
Shadow.
The thing is, become aware of it. That's what Munka was all about. Your pretension is a long-term affair, Susan. You gotta address that. That's been a long-term thing. Too pretentious.
It's true. We all have. None of us are all good or all bad. There's always a mix in there. You do lean one way or to the other, but there's definitely everybody has a shadow. Everybody has a dark side. Everybody has, things they're dealing with.
The thing is to become aware of it. That's how you become whole. According to Carl Jung, to be a whole person is not to be perfect, not to be all good, but to be conscious, for your conscious self to know you're unconscious, to look at that shadow and say, I am pretentious. I'm so pretentious I don't even notice it. It's like the water I'm swimming in. Or I'm arrogant. I'm an asshole sometimes. You've got to see it. And then it starts to be not as big of a problem. But what you don't see, it gets you from behind. It trips you up. So just, self-inquiry. I mean, I'm a psychologist, a therapist, but everybody doesn't want to do therapy. But if you don't want to do it, just inquire into yourself.
Yeah.
By journaling. Just write not, I went to the store, but I dreamt, oh my God, I dreamt of this ocean. I dreamt of a tsunami. Or, whatever, just write your dreams down. Or I felt so jealous of him. Or I felt so jealous. Just write it down. There's your shadow. Your dreams will show you. Your feelings will show you. Writing a journal is the warrior path. Because therapy is not for everybody. It's expensive. It's time consuming, self-indulgent in some ways. But journaling, we all can do. And look at yourself. Like Monka told me 100 times, my great tool, he said, is relentless self-inquiry. Just look at what you're doing. Try to see yourself. Try to see the stuff you don't want to see and free yourself of it. Get the monkeys off your back. Write them all down in your journal.
It's great advice. It really is. In your book, you also say an interesting thing. You said that humans are becoming homo luminous. What does that mean?
That was what this Australian shaman told me. She said that we've been carbon-based. Our bodies were based on carbon, so you can burn us up and we turn to ash. But she said more and more, there's so much light pouring in. There's so many scalar waves and so much light that we are transforming to crystalline based, where we will be much more light filled. So I don't know over what period of time, but I do know that a lot of light is coming through from the Pleiades. And it is transforming us. I don't feel that, just like I didn't feel the shape shifting. And I'm sure that if I was cremated tomorrow, I would just be ashes now. But apparently this is slowly happening. Sorry, I'm coughing so much. I have postnasal drip. It's one of my crosses to bear.
All good. I mean,
my whole life. And, it's
this conversation is so good that no one's even going to notice that. They're just going to be listening to the words. No one's going to notice.
Oh, good. Sorry, I just want to apologize to them for the coughing.
All good. We're coming up on an hour, though. Like, I loved your book. Everyone should read it. What do you hope people will learn and take away from reading your life story that is really magical, mystical, enlightening? What's your greatest hope?
My hope is probably just the same as your hope for your podcast. That somebody will call me up and say, Buzz, you really made me think. You really made me think. I just thought this wasn't particularly meaningful, all these trips around the sun I take on this planet. But now I realize I'm an eternal being of light. And that's a beautiful thing. And I'm much more powerful. I'm a creator. And my consciousness can take me many, many places. I mean, it does every night when you sleep. When you dream, you're out of your body. You're traveling all over the place when you dream. And you can do it without going to sleep.
Absolutely.
Well, that's what I hope. I hope that if they read these books, these little stories of things that happen, they'll think, now I remember something like that happened to me, but I just dismissed it.
And the final note, I know you probably got to go. The final note is, in the book, you do speak about the fact that interdimensional beings, your teachers, throughout your life, that you have been told that you are a scribe, and that this was your sole purpose at the end of the day. And why don't you talk a little bit about that before we say?
Right. Yes, from when I was young, they were always telling me I was supposed to write. But for some reason, I became a high school English teacher. Then I thought, oh, well, I should be an actress. Disaster. Um, then I decided I should be a psychologist. So I got a waitress job at Windows on the World. Well, glad my timing was, I was there way before it fell out of the sky, and put myself through graduate school and became a psychologist. But always they were telling me I should be a writer. And I think I was afraid. I didn't have the confidence. I think I put it off and put it off, and I wasn't disciplined. My head was in the clouds, as the book shows. I was spaced out, undisciplined, and I just didn't pick up my pen until I was, well, first I picked it up in my 40s, but I put it down again. Finally, in my 60s, I started writing, and I've written 4 books. And I'm glad that I did, but not till later in my life. But I finally did it. See, I'm slow. I was the last one in the class to learn the bunny hop. Not because I didn't have toes, because I did have toes by then, but I'm a
Well,
little
I mean,
slow,
we exactly. You
but I
got there,
got
and
there.
honestly, I just had a lovely interview with this woman, Carmen Turner Schott, who's an astrologist, and she talked about nodes in the moon, and that a lot of people don't hit their soul purpose, their node, their rhythm until they get into their 60s. So maybe maybe you're just
Maybe
supposed
that's
to be
me.
spot on, and you have many years ahead of you to write more books. So it's just your next chapter. That's all.
Well,
It's your
we'll
next,
see.
you
We'll
know,
see.
it
We'll see.
thank
Thank you.
you, Susan. I think you have achieved your goal of being the scribe. The book was amazing. I really hope that it touches as many people as possible because it really does give you a completely different perspective on life, on how magical it is and mystical, and how we are here to love, that we are all one, and that we are so much more powerful than we think we are. We are. We
Swish.
really are.
Swish.
Yes.
Bing bong.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Susan.
Fuzzy.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Fate from Atheism to Enlightenment. We will see you next week. I would like to thank my guest, Susan Plunket. Her book is Paranormal Perspectives, a Jungian understanding of transcendent experiences. It's a mouthful, folks, but it is a great read. And journey well, everyone. Thank you, Susan. And that is a wrap on this episode of Fate from Atheism to Enlightenment. I hope you enjoyed this one. I certainly did. Pick up Susan's book, Paranormal Perspectives, a Jungian understanding of transcendent experiences. That sure is a mouthful, but it's a great read. It really is. She has had so many magical, mystical, metaphysical experiences in her life. Starts out in World War II and ends in modern times. It's got a lot of history in there. We didn't even get into some of the other incidences that have occurred in her lifetime. So make sure you pick it up. I will put it in the show notes, and click the link and get that book because it's really eye opening and it's a magical way to live your life. I really um kind of shocked that she's not more of a psychic or a medium type person. But she does seem to have the ability of some sort of extrasensory perception of things more than the average person does. I mean, she really has the ability to send her consciousness in places that I know that I couldn't. I mean, I sit in meditation. I I try and exercise my ability to open myself up into spirit guides, into a higher conscious. I listen to my inner voice, and a lot of time it doesn't say anything. I go nowhere. I try and calm my monkey mind as much as I can and listen to my higher self. And sometimes I feel like things are happening. I'll have some energy stuff going on. But as far as having any strong, vivid, lucid dreaming or downloads or visions, none of that is happening for me. Not yet. I am, maybe I'm trying too hard. I don't know. Maybe I am not relaxing enough. Maybe I haven't hit the right stride yet. Maybe I have brain damage and my brain won't do it. I don't know it. I don't know. But she certainly has the ability to receive information, see things, experience really paranormal stuff that most people maybe wouldn't even be able to pick up on, seeing ghosts, seeing all kinds of things. So pick up the book. I mean, it's a great read. Um, well, guys, if you like what I'm doing here and you think I got something to say, do me a favor, tell a friend, subscribe to the show, like. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm at F.A.T.E. podcast. I put little clips up of the show. I try and do social media as much as I can. I'm not great at it. I'm trying to get better. I need to get better. I'm a work in progress, as with everything in life. But if you support the show, if you like what I'm saying, go ahead and follow me, subscribe, tell somebody about the show if you feel like they would be a good candidate and they would be open to receive the information that I am spewing on a weekly basis. I would like to put as many people on this show as possible and raise the vibration of our planet so we can have better outcomes. It's a little dark out there, little low on the vibration land as far as I'm concerned. So with that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this show. We're really starting to get into some crazy topics, and I'm loving it, and I'm hoping you're loving it too. I want to see you next week here on the Fate podcast, from atheism to enlightenment. Thank you for journeying with me, and as always, welcome to your fate, everyone. I'll see you next week. Bye.